Welcome to the Logic of AI Magic, the show that strips away the hype and gets down to the hard choices. If AI is the magic, we're here to understand the logic that keeps it reliable, trusted, and running the world's most mission critical systems. Today's guest turned spreadsheets into strategy and transformed finance functions worth hundreds of millions. James Post is a CPA by training and manager of finance transformation at TTX Company. But before that, he spent 5 years at KPMG, uncovering millions in savings opportunities, leading global teams across United States and India. His automated processes, built forecasting models, helped win big in new business. Whether he's mentoring the next generation of finance pros or redesigning how Fortune 500 companies handle their cash flow, James brings the heat. Welcome to the show, James Post.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you, James. If you can take a moment to tell our viewers about what is it that you do at the TTX company, what's your role about, and also what's your company doing the work, that would be great.
Yeah, happy to. So I joined TTX about a year ago. So you said I came from KPMG consulting background, doing large-scale finance transformation work and Oracle implementations. And so with that, a lot of it came with business functional design and process improvement, kind of across like source to pay, quote to cash, record to report, processes in the accounting and finance realm. And so at TTX, I'm a manager at their finance transformation practice. So our team is essentially like an internal consulting role where we're looking for process improvement opportunities, time savings, cost savings, mostly in like the back office automation with AP, AR automations, a bit with like supply chain procurement folks as well. And then comfort with like logistics folks as well for some of those initiatives. But TTX overall, we're in the freight rail business. So we own several 100,000 railroad cars across North America. Our primary owners are the Class 1 railroads. So think Union Pacific, Norfolk Southern, BNSF. And we essentially operate as really a cost-saving vehicle for them. It's a very capital-intensive business. We own and operate and maintain our own fleet of rail cars. And essentially, railroad companies go out, win contracts to move freight, and then they hire TTX and rent our rail cars to fulfill those contracts. So we're our own private entity. We are owned by the major railroads, but essentially we serve to really help with how capital-intensive and cost-intensive railroad freight is. So overall goal is to help make the whole railroad industry and the shipping industry much more cost efficient.
Got it. How old is the company? It's been around for a long time.
It's been around since the 50s or 60s. We just had, I think, 70 or 75th anniversary. So yeah, it's been around a while. We're, I think it was originally in Philly and then Chicago for a while. And we just moved to Charlotte, North Carolina a few years ago. And so I'm based out of Charlotte. Our headquarters is in South End, for any viewers familiar with the Charlotte area. But yeah, we've been around for a while. So it's been great to see a lot of people are long, like tenured with a company, like 10, 20, 30 years. A lot of people like in the field, like worked in the rail yard, or like blue collar roles, and they shifted and moved to white collar in the corporate office. So it's a good mix of people that you meet, and then some new hires too with the move to Charlotte. So a good blend of folks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so safe to say that TTX is older than AI, right? Hopefully.
Oh yeah. Much older.
So it's interesting. And that's why this is really intriguing. And, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. I'd like to understand, like, how does a company that has gone through a lot of transformation over the decades, right, was started almost like before computers were really, things that companies were using, and AI wasn't even around, and it's transforming itself. And now we are talking about applying AI in a company where, as you're saying, there's a lot of capital intensive stuff. And I'm sure there are processes that are decades old. that have always worked for the company. So why change anything that's not broken? There is risk associated with anytime new technology is brought in. So you talk to us about you know applying AI, especially in your area, finance and operations, right? It's highly risky. So what are your observations there around risk, and how are you sort of addressing those?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, the use of AI is fairly new at TTX. Just got essentially approval from IT security. So just from the data security aspect, to your point, where we have very sensitive data, we're moving freight all around North America.
Hmm.
A lot of like telemetrics data with rail cars moving around and some large, again, capital investments and financial transactions. So we're pretty protective with how we share our data, especially when we're uploading it to like a GPT or Gemini model for analysis. But I think the big the big risk, to your point, where we're introducing AI and have it involved in processes where on the finance side for creating financial records in Oracle, again, largely material amounts of receivables or payables, invoices. If we're asking AI to digest a large data set of like rail car data and logistics data, especially like maintenance data, and try and predict what parts will fail and when. And if it's wildly off and we replace a part, 10 years too soon, and the AI
Hmm.
model is totally, AWOL and doesn't really fulfill what we need, and it's not like bespoke to TTX strategy, um, there's huge risk in play. And even at the small kind of local level where we have personnel interacting with Copilot, chat, having to do kind of day-to-day activities, and it hallucinates a little bit or tries to lead you down a rabbit hole and kind of takes your conversation sideways to what you don't want to do in the original prompt.
Hmm.
I think people are kind of naturally kind of cynical. And so if it messes up just a little bit, the distrust is pretty immediate to where people start bashing AI and saying, no, it just hallucinates or goes sideways. I can't rely on it to do anything. And people get easily
Hmm.
deterred or intimidated by it. Um, so I think it's ultimately about being smart where we use it, where to use generative AI or machine learning AI. There's a bunch of different variations of what AI is in the umbrella, but I think it's a very valuable tool. Um, I think we're very far away from like general intelligence stuff where, the Sam Altmans of the world talking about that. But I think introducing it in our workflows in a responsible manner is going to prove to be, pretty large benefit over time.
Yeah.
I think right now we're starting with some smaller scope stuff and we're seeing some good results, and we'll slowly work up to where we're talking about like large, big data analysis of all of our risk
Got it.
moving around the country, right? And then we'll trust with more and more scope and more impact. But for now, with the smaller scope stuff that we're doing, like RAG agents for policy retrieval, it's been pretty successful so
Hmm.
far. And I think more and more people are trusting the AI models and how we're using it and building it. But I think it takes a lot of governance, a lot of responsibility to use it appropriately.
So, so when you came into TTX, like, was there AI already being used in some form, or there was not much of that, like if a year or two ago?
Really, not much of that at all. Um,
Hmm.
like I said, we were pretty, I'd say, timid, maybe is the right word, or uneasy as far as using AI in our company. I think our IT security team is by default, and it's a good thing, protective, right?
Hmm.
And our railroad owners were actually, starting to use it already and sharing their benefits or use cases they deployed.
Hmm.
I think that changed our leadership minds to where we started using AI, and now we got to a point where we established an AI center of excellence. We're using tools again like Cognitos, like third parties. We have Copilots or Microsoft Shop. We're building out some Copilot agents in Studio and the agentic workflows, stuff like that. But kind of to your earlier point, where it's a an older company, maybe a little slow to adapt. Some of that could have came into play. Um, but now I think now we're off and running.
I see. So I and that actually makes it even more interesting actually. So in a company that's been around for a long time and processes have been working, and now you come in and we create a center of excellence for AI. Talk about that journey a bit so that others can also learn, like what were your learnings, what was hard, what was easy, something that you can share would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the concept of like a center of excellence is not new, right? So we
Hmm.
would set those
Yeah.
up like KPMG, a COE for like Oracle implementation work and any kind of subject area or kind of like a quasi department, if you will. It's how I see a center of excellence really. And so the concept of like a framework is pretty easy to grasp as far as how we organize personnel from where. But then
Hmm.
they helped us kind of get our bearings for a structure. But then it goes into the security side of the house for when we use these agents and these models and we're uploading, TTX like contract data or like invoice documents, like where's that data going? Like how's like the black box
Yeah.
of AI like really working? Where's our data being shared and used to get a result? And then from there, how do we gather ideas from department leads as part of the COE? And we have a core development team that constitutes myself and then some of our data analysts, and we have data scientists internally at TTX. And then we have our department leads, representatives from fleet, finance, HR, legal, equipment, and they submit their ideas. But it's also about informing them what AI can do, realistically,
Mm.
what it can do. Because if you go like away from the workspace, you just go like Wall Street Journal or some other news outlet, or like I said, like Sam Altman or Zuckerberg, like they talk about AI can do
Yeah.
absolutely everything under the sun. And there's like general
Yep.
intelligence and it can, you know, be a full blown human in like 6 months time. And people think that
Well, now
anything, yeah.
yeah, I'm seeing ads of super intelligence. So this is
Right.
not even uh, so yeah, it's the world is actually quite split in terms of what people are saying.
Mhm.
But fundamentally, I think even Satya Nadella said it well, right? It's not the capability of AI that will be a challenge. It's actually deploying it and how humans are transforming how we operate. And that might take a long time. Like, look at the case of nuclear power, right? I mean, it was invented a long time ago, proved long time ago, and yet the world still does not produce most of its power using nuclear, which is, I mean, hopefully, um, sort of the best way of doing it. Now, there is resistance to that because it's a very powerful technology and there is risks associated with it. So we're still burning coal, we're still burning oil, right? And that's something that might happen even with the AI adoption. While AI could become super intelligent, like almost like nuclear power level, right? But are we deploying it would be the real question. And that's where it's interesting. As you say, you come in and create a center of excellence and figure out how we can start talking about AI in a traditional environment. But it's interesting for me to hear that it's actually in the finance and operations space that you're bringing in AI, right? One would think that that's money, that means a mistake would cause a problem, right? Have you, like, is there an example of a place where you spotted AI was going to make a big financial mistake?
Yeah, it's a good question. In the finance space, it's a lot about like document processing and taking a source document and creating like an AP invoice or AR invoice or a goods receipt.
Hmm.
So a lot of it's the finance operations side of the house. It's all the transactional work that we
Hmm.
try to automate where we can. And to your point, where a lot of like if it's a property tax bill or like a lease bill where we're having like AI read a PDF file, like a source document, extract the key data, build out an
Mm-hmm.
API to talk to Oracle and create the invoice. If
Yeah.
if the AI model hallucinates and essentially like digitally fat fingers a number or extracts a wrong figure, like the invoice number as like the amount, and it creates $10 million invoice, then and it
Hmm.
goes along the line, gets approved, and money gets out the door, then yeah, it's a huge risk. So I think it's really important. If the models are getting better and better, and we have data
Yeah.
validation steps in place, like I mentioned, we build out incognitos to where we're relying on the AI model to read the file, but we still have
Mm-hmm.
controls in the code to catch any outliers if there is a mistake. And sometimes if the team's running like parallel, I'll have GPT model or Gemini model read the same document and make sure the same data is output before it goes along and creates something
Mm-hmm.
in Oracle. So I think it's important to have good controls in place in the workflow and not just submit something to AI and then being like hands off, it's done. I think you have
I
to
see.
be really responsible and check the work without losing all the benefit, right? But still having good like quality assurance in place.
Yeah. So while you've been working with AI tools for the last few quarters, I assume, are you seeing that the amount of counter checking and quality checks that humans have to do is reducing over time? And then, if I have to ask you to predict at what time in the future you think one particular function, and pick your function in finance, can be completely autonomous because AI has understood it and you trust it.
That's a good question. As far as like the end game, I don't know. But
Yeah.
as far as this getting incrementally better and better, yes, absolutely. There will always be kind of outliers or exceptions that a human just has to get involved to where
Hmm.
even just like no amount of AI agent instructions could really handle some certain exceptions. So I think humans, yes, should always be involved, but it's more about, to me, the tedious like data extraction, invoice creation or invoice lookup, goods receipt creation, stuff like that, where human personnel really should not be doing. It's kind of like low value, tedious work. It's important. It's important to do. Obviously, you need to create invoices to get paid, but as far as like data entry, data extract stuff, where AI models are really good at doing that type of work, and we'd have human review
Hmm.
in place, that frees up more time to have humans be involved with forward-looking activities and forecast models and being like more predictive and working on other projects for time savings in other areas. I think it's about like the low-hanging fruit of all the transactional work that we could automate and do it probably easier and quicker development time with these AI models instead of all like the coding it would have taken historically. And then from there,
Yeah.
to your point, like relying more and more on the AI models to do it and having kind of like agent to agent and like running through both models to verify it's working correctly. Um, I don't
I
know if
see.
we're going to
So you're saying,
with humans getting replaced, but yeah, more reliable.
I see.
Sure.
So, okay. So you're saying, like, use one AI model to check another AI model's output. So it's like, instead of having humans review everything, have AI review what another AI would have done. If both are agreeing, um, and then hopefully they're not trained the same way. That's why I think it's a very interesting point. Diversity of thinking is important. Humans have it, and I think that's one of the undervalued uh, aspects about humans currently. When we're talking about AI, everybody's super excited, but guess what? Most of the AI models out there are built on the same data sets. um, 90% of it is the same internet, you know but humans are all very different. 8 billion plus people have different backgrounds, and therefore when we look at the same problem, because the thought process is different, we might be able to catch a mistake just because we are different brain. um it is def- I mean, what my experience has been with all this data extraction is, last 2 years, we've gone a long way, right? It used to be, and by the way, it's not a new problem. AI has been used for data extraction for more than a decade or two. We used to have this open source Tesseract technology, and then all the cloud vendors had OCR capabilities, and there's a whole bunch of startups that were doing that as well. The accuracy there used to be 70, 80%. Handwriting, people used to struggle. So that's like 10, 15 years ago. Now we are sitting at a point where last 2 years, the LLMs became, multimodal. So they started reading documents, but there was a lot of hallucination just a year and a half ago. And then over time, they have gotten better and better. 6 months ago, I would say they would be getting in good text accuracy, handwriting accuracy. But if you ask them, point out where it is, then they would not be able to point out the location. The location would be off and stuff like that. The most recent releases from Gemini actually get the location correct as well. So if you see the trajectory, it's getting better and better. Um, Almost human level, I would say. Not exactly human level. There's one example that one of our engineers was pointing out. There was a human annotation. They wrote their initials, um, WWP, but the first W and the second W were different. And AI couldn't just convince itself that somebody would write the same letter in different ways right next to each other. So it had to say the second one is not W, but a human. I asked my son to look at it, and it's like, what is it? He said, that's another W, even though the human was lazy, right? I mean, you write one and then. So it's a different brain for sure. And that's where I kind of wonder, like, and we tried it on all the AI models that were publicly available, like from the hyperscalers. Every model agreed that it was WHP as the initials of whoever is initially. But you asked humans, they said, no, it's WWP. And that gives me some pause. And like, while we can use multiple AI to, review each other, humans are still built different.
Yeah.
So do you think there is a sort of a future where you can have humans in the loop, but slowly take them out of the loop and sort of do spot checking only in finance? Do you think you would be able to do that in finance?
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, like, yeah, you appreciate how remarkable the human mind is. We're just secondhand, like obviously what's WHA, what's two W's, to whereas it's even with how simple kind of coding, like the no code instructions for an agent to go look for it, like it's remarkable that obviously a human's much better, but it's about at what scale. Like, do you really want a human looking at 10,000 invoices a year, looking at these
Yeah.
10 data points and building an AP or a spreadsheet to upload to Oracle? Like, no, that's their time is much better spent elsewhere. I do believe that we talk about like thresholds and controls and QA in place, and having good like kind of like exception center in place, that what we have in like Cognitos, if a control catches something and spits it out before it creates anything in Oracle, having controls in place in Oracle, if it's over a certain threshold, it needs human review.
Mm-hmm.
If an AI model like read the source document and created it. But to your point, I think it's much more beneficial to just let the AI run in the background and process the thousands of transactions that we taught it how to reliably do, and just do a few spot checking here and there based on like financial materiality, and then spend our time on more complex tasks that AI is probably not capable to do yet, or at the scope that we want to do yet. Or I know a lot of like AI companies are enticing people to use their tools more and more, and the tokenization of calling
Mm-hmm.
these models. I'm sure that price per token is going to go up eventually, right? So it's a lot about what the ROI and where you're using these AI models, assuming the cost is going to go up, and it's variable, it's going to go up, where it makes most sense to utilize an AI capability, or make it more rules-based like code, or analog and keep it human processing.
Interesting. Analog. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what you're talking about is the fear that people have, like there's a token tax, right? And I want to be careful about how many tokens I'm burning. While in the last few quarters, you've seen dramatic drops in the token cost,
Mhm.
but it's like the Jevons paradox. I mean, for example, in our company, while the cost of one token is reducing, the amount of dollars we are spending on a monthly basis or tokens is actually exponentially growing, right? Uh, and that's happened in actually old days. And steam engine used to use coal, and that it is a Jevons paradox that says that um, people wanted to make steam engines more efficient so that less money is spent on coal in the economy, right? I mean, so people did that, made more efficient steam engines. Turns out that because they made it efficient and they used less coal, more engines were used. And then as an economy, we were spending a lot more on coal. I think that's what the $1 trillion+ investment on token infrastructure is all based on, that thesis that people are going to just spend more and more. OpenAI just reached 20 billion ARR just recently, and it's growing. So it remains to be seen when there will be a correction of token cost, or they'll keep on improving technology and end customers do not feel the thing. But one thing is clear, I see a trend of too much token consumption. Like, I want to do 1 plus 2, let me use an LLM. I can also use a simple calculator, right? I mean, this is the like kids are using LLMs for simple math problems, which a calculator would have done. So if you just look at the impact on how much energy is consumed to do simple calculations, if you're just throwing everything at LLM, I think that's going to come back and bite the token philosophy. We have to figure out what has to be done deterministically using symbols, like a programming model, or typically why computers were invented in the first place. Finance is the perfect place where computers actually showed that they are better than humans, because computers never made a calculation mistake, right? Much faster, never got tired, never called in sick at the end of the quarter, and so on and so forth. That's where computers shined, and precisely where AI models are struggling to shine. But even if they do shine, the cost is so high for doing the same work. And there is this notion of neurosymbolic computing, which is gaining traction. We've been also working on that. The idea is to figure out when do you need an LLM and when you don't need an LLM. But that decision is sort of hidden from the customer. They don't need to worry about it. And the benefit of not using an LLM is it's faster and it's more accurate, just like finance needs it, right? um, that boundary of deciding when to be creative and not is actually a very hard problem. Um, you can be too creative and hurt the business, or sometimes too creative and actually help the business. Very subjective. And therefore, in that boundary is where the human should sit. Human says, okay, if you're being creative, let me be the governance layer. So, from your governance angle, what you're doing at the TTX company, what are the controls? Like, if you have to tell our viewers, what are the things that they need to be worrying about more concretely, like two or three things, that would help.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to your point, there's like a hybrid approach to where we want to democratize the use of AI and have people like interact with Copilot, have it using for just like general research in their day-to-day work and
Mhm,
productivity, like taking
mhm,
notes for them, drafting emails, etc. And then there's kind of the citizen developer to where they're creating agents and creating like workflows. And then the next step is integrating with like SharePoint, Oracle, our logistics, database. Then it gets more and more complex. I think the overall kind of sticking point is you want to limit what you just have access to, what kind of the typical stakeholder in the business has access to. You want them to use AI and trust in
mhm.
day to day and submit good use cases, because I think the best use cases still come from getting boots on the ground. but really controlling what we have, like Copilot Studio and Azure AI Foundry, and the ability to incorporate APIs and really do complex things and higher scope and higher risk things to really
Mm-hmm.
keep that closed off with just the core COE team, and
Mm-hmm.
try to filter through the idea submission and get comfortable with people using AI day to day and know what it can do and to get good use case ideas. But we can't just like flood the zone with a whole like dozens of ideas at a time. We need to be responsible with, okay, let's start with a RAG agent to retrieve like TTX policy
Mm-hmm.
responses, and then do like QA to make sure it's not hallucinating or grabbing policy or using something from the internet, superseding policy guidance, and then work our way to like workflow creation of an invoice or a goods receipt, and then just slowly incrementing up and up and up. But we, yeah, shouldn't be giving kind of the keys to the castle to just the everyday user. It really should be focused on a core team of data scientists, data analysts. Our chief data analytics officer heads up the COE at TTX, and it's really
Mm-hmm.
about having the right personnel with subject matter expertise, with it being such a novel technology, but they still have a strong
Mm-hmm.
background in programming and coding and data analytics, in information technology anyways, that they're better suited to lead our COE team, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the everyday user trying to get in there and create agents and using their credentials to like build out APIs and stuff. And then it can go like the Wild West, because it can be a very, very powerful
Got it.
tool. But if it's not, yeah, properly constrained, then they can go south pretty fast.
Yeah. Speaking of constrained, one of the analogies I use quite a lot is actually a train. I mean, imagine how powerful a train is that's going on two rails, right? It's probably one of the most powerful machines that humans have built. I mean, this I don't know how many tons it carries. One train, I see it go like it's a mile long train, and if it rams into something, it's just going to destroy whatever comes in its way. But it's highly safe. In fact, you could run it on autopilot because it's just going on those two rails are highly constrained, right? So, in fact, AI, if we can figure out as a society to constrain AI to go on these guardrails, quote unquote, and then we can say, okay, run it on autopilot. I know it can only do this thing and do it really well, but it can be highly powerful. It can be more powerful than one person or 100 people or even 1,000 people. But constraining AI is actually the future. While we talk about AGI, I think it creates more fear. Let me talk about that fear aspect as well, from your perspective. So, in your industry, if somebody goes and says, look, AGI is already here, anything that any human does, AI will do. Now you should use AI, right? I mean, like somebody telling me, bring in AI and soon you lose your own job, right? That how is this sort of the human aspect of this, adoption, the fear of AI coming in, not the question whether AI is smarter than me, but rather, what if it is smarter than me? What happens to me? Is that how is it playing in your industry?
As far as, there is definitely a fear factor, because we're exposing AI and like Copilot and using people use it day to day. We want their ideas for how AI can help automate, even like the small
Mhm.
scope things like we talk about like document, like data extraction, like
Mhm.
email creation, invoice hookup, stuff like that. Pretty simple things. And there are some people that they're honest with me, like outside of meetings, saying like, "Hey, is AI going to replace me, or can it do what I do?" And I'd say at this stage, absolutely not. Even with the talk of general intelligence, and to your analogy with
Mhm.
the train, like you really need strong guardrails in place and kind of compartmentalize where AI is being used and being responsible with it, as opposed to if you get too much scope, especially something like general intelligence that does everything with no guardrails, then
Mm-hmm.
I think just the distrust and just the quality of output will quickly plummet. Because even now, if you give an AI too much scope or instructions without breaking down into like tasks and subtasks, it hallucinates,
Mm-hmm.
and hallucination just a fancy way of saying it's just flat out wrong, right? And then it just goes to the workflow, and then the final output is just garbage that you can't use. And also, I think
That's true.
the comparison of general intelligence, I think AI is essentially like mimic human intelligence, right? And us humans are imperfect creatures, right? It's a lot of what we do
Mm-hmm.
is subjective in the output, and what's good or bad is subjective. Where it's
Mm-hmm.
hard data, to your point, like rules based approach or programming, where it's extracting data, populating an API, and going creating something. We can do that today with code. We don't need AI. AI just makes it a lot easier if you have like a huge variety of source documents. It's much easier to use an AI model
Mm-hmm.
to read it and give instructions as opposed to like teaching it what to look for each document type. But stuff where it's general intelligence and you're asking to like write a report or emails or like a whole like create like a 10K, and
Mm-hmm.
all like the write up is, to like me it could look good, to you it could look terrible, right? It's the same product, but it's about people's association of what's good and bad. And I don't think, I guess the human element and the quality of what general intelligence may look like is really what we think it could be as far as like a utopian viewpoint. I think it's more of like a marketing kind of hot button like
Mm-hmm.
buzzword to gather billions and billions of dollars for data centers. I don't think general intelligence is really possible. I could be wrong and look back at this podcast when it's, you know, Terminator times, but we'll see.
Actually, let me ask you a question. If Albert Einstein was available to be, working in your department, right? So, I mean, he's good at math, no doubt, right? So, would you hire Albert Einstein?
For Albert Einstein, of course.
Okay. So, and would you trust what he does to your books?
Depending on his background and yeah, accounting and US GAAP. But yeah, I think kind of to your point, if I hire somebody who's smart, just generally super intelligent, doesn't mean that
Yeah, that's
doesn't mean they can do like a finance role and excel in it and just in their guardrail.
all right.
And yeah,
Okay. So, next step, right? So, okay, you trust the person. Albert Einstein, definitely we trust. Now, he shows you a spreadsheet that he has come up with. Right? This is the modeling for the business, right? But because he's Albert Einstein, you can't understand it, right? Because he can model it and
yeah,
it's so complicated. Only Albert Einstein can understand it. Would you then hire him?
no, don't,
No, right?
because yeah,
And that's the
yeah,
that's the challenge, right? Basically, humans will trust if we can also understand,
right,
right? Not that not, I know you're smart. When people say they're super intelligent, I'm like, okay, then I can't trust, because we just had this hypothetical conversation here. Albert Einstein is, to me, is super intelligent, and he comes up with a fancy modeling and shows, yes, I'm gonna get 10% more profit in the next quarter, but I'm looking at it, it's like beyond my comprehension, and I'm like, maybe. Then I'm basically trusting the motives of the person rather than what I'm seeing here. Now, because Albert Einstein is a human, you can trust the motives of a human because, eventually at the DNA level, we have the same things that, we care about, right? But AI is at the DNA level very different. I use this example like think of reptiles that don't care about their kids. I mean, they just leave the, eggs and go, right? Humans are different. Humans would say, like, man, that's ridiculous. So at the DNA level, there can be a big difference, but nobody says that a snake is not intelligent. Maybe a snake is more intelligent than a mouse. And a mouse is a mammal and snake isn't, and the snake can actually capture the mouse, eat it, right? So the fact that intelligence itself doesn't mean that it's aligned with how we think is a big question for society to answer. And even if we go into finance and accounting, the question is like, will I understand? In fact, in the AlphaGo game, where AI beat the world champion of Go, people thought it was like a non-human move that AlphaGo did, and because no human would have done that, and eventually it won the game just because it thinks very differently. And I always wonder, like in finance and accounting, if non-human moves are being proposed when we're talking about AGI and future, will humans be okay with taking that thing? And God knows, I mean, it all depends. Maybe the CEO says, you know what, let's take a risk and see what happens, because and what if it actually succeeds? Then man, you have Albert Einstein, he runs finance, and that's when we are totally out of control, right? So it remains to be seen. But from your perspective, next 2 years, what do you think it'd be a more believable impact that AI will have in your industry, like 2 years? So if you're having this podcast in 2 years, what will you say? Yeah, now this is happening.
So the next 2 years, AI would probably be at least sprinkled in or introduced with a lot of the transactional workflows that I described, with like invoice creation or navigation in Oracle or ServiceNow, any like the Microsoft platforms like SharePoint, Outlook. I think basic navigation like day to day, and it's already today, but AI will be entrenched in everything we do. And I think we'll be kind of relying it with more and more scope and bigger projects, to where we get into like telemetrics and rail car logistics data and forecasting, maintenance cost planning, which is our biggest line item for expense. Like, when will rail car parts break down? Will make sense to do preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance on non-rail equipment, stuff of that nature, to where it really impacts the bottom line. If we can rely on AI to be more and more accurate, to where it's predicting a part will break down in X amount of time, and then actuals come in, and yes, that part broke down within 6 months of what AI said it would. And we're always, again, we have in-house data analytics team doing that stuff today with current software solutions. But I think in the next 2 years, we'll probably build and invest in our own models and have, again, years of data, historical data built up, and we'll get to see more benefits at like larger scale and time and cost savings, relying on AI as the output. But going back to your Einstein example, I think it'll still be pretty tight governance with how we deploy it and how we rely on the results as we slowly give it more and more scope. In 2 years, we'll be like, I don't think we're going to be to a point where I'm interacting with an AI like role that's like a finance analyst, right? And it does multiple things. I think the context of like an AI agent will still be limited to like certain tasks and subtasks in a larger workflow. And we'll just build out more and more complex agentic workflows with controls and governance in place, and kind of slowly build trust with how we use AI.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Awesome. So one last question before we wrap up, James, like for our viewers, if there's one important lesson that you've learned that you'd like to share around AI, or, even the process around humans relating to AI, what would you talk about?
Yeah, I'd say kind of shifting gears. I feel like the last couple of minutes have been more like doom and gloom with AI and how it hallucinates, or how we need to make sure we constantly control and like check its work. But I would say, kind of on the on the positive side, I think AI is going to create a lot of jobs and a lot of opportunity and economic growth, and be able to do more things. I encourage people just to like kind of get their hands dirty and try Copilot out and try build Node agent and seeing what it does. It's a pretty cool technology. Again, the results it comes back with can be subjective, and you like it or you don't. But there's a lot of cool use cases out there, and going like YouTube and what people are building out and deploying. It's a really powerful tool, and it takes not too much time to kind of get going to see what it can do. And a lot of people are worried about, oh, AI will replace me, or I'm doomed to be obsolete. I think the other way to look at it is to really take heart and upskill your workforce, get them comfortable using AI. And I think the real value across any industry and any role is that if I have some current state pain point, you're comfortable using AI and you know what it can do and how to build your own agents at like a basic level, then you can take initiative and really move up the career ladder, because executives are always going to be looking for how AI is saving them time and money. And if you're well versed even a little bit with its capabilities and what to do, and you have like the skill set in place to kind of build it out and design it, I think it will open up a lot of career opportunities for everybody. It's one of those things that you can avoid it if you really try hard enough, but you really need to jump in and get some experience now, because it's going to be fully entrenched in everything we do.
Okay, awesome. So essentially, for the viewers, if AI is a horse, you need to get on top of the horse and become the best jockey around. And that keeps you more valuable to the businesses that can hire you, the horse and the jockey. Thank you, James Post, for spending the hour with us. For the viewers, please subscribe, share, tune in to our podcast. The next episode will come out soon. Take care. This is The Logic of AI Magic.